As I mentioned earlier, one reason we smoke is our addiction to nicotine. The second and more insidious reason we smoke is your subconscious, which has been deceived. I want your full attention, as together we will uncover the trap that all of us, as smokers or vapors, have fallen into. Today, we will thoroughly expose it and understand it in depth. Let's return to the question. Why did you start smoking? It was something you had never tried before in your life, and you didn't know what it would taste like. The only thing you knew was that it had many negatives and was harmful to your health. Your parents probably told you never to smoke. Nevertheless, many people put aside everything they knew and everything they had heard, and actually smoked. Let's dig deeper and understand the influence of the subconscious on our thinking. In general, the subconscious makes up about 95% of our thinking. Did you know that? Everything we've tasted, smelled, seen, heard, all the experiences of our lives are stored there, in our subconscious. Imagine the subconscious as a tiny hidden camera on you, with unlimited memory that records everything you experience every day, in every moment of your life. For example, think about all the times you see people smoking in movies, being portrayed as relaxed and successful. These images are stored in your subconscious and influence your behavior without you even realizing it. The subconscious has a significant impact on our lives, even in objective matters, such as cigarettes and the damage they cause. If your subconscious is deceived by cigarettes or any other drug, then it's unlikely that you won't be misled. The subconscious acts as a messenger or processes the stimuli you receive on a conscious level and activates certain behavior patterns without you realizing it. As a result, the decisions you make are heavily influenced by your subconscious thinking without you realizing it. According to research, 80% of smokers want to quit smoking, but they struggle because of the strong addiction to nicotine and the deeply rooted beliefs in their subconscious. Subconscious thought is much more powerful in its ability to process information and essentially guides us through life without us even realizing it. In fact, when it comes to speed, the subconscious operates about 30,000 times faster than the conscious mind, which means it plays a crucial role in the split-second decisions you need to make in your life. What's even more impressive is that usually the decisions we make unconsciously are correct. For example, the subconscious correctly evaluates when we should be afraid of something dangerous, when we should be charmed by something beautiful, and when we should use our subconscious skills, like walking or driving. The accuracy of the subconscious is especially important in dangerous situations. Marketers are well aware of the power of suggestion on the subconscious. For many decades, we have seen posters on the streets, on television, and in magazines showing beautiful and healthy people with a cigarette in their hand. Personally, since I was a child, I remember receiving information about cigarettes and how they relax you, the confidence they give you, and how good you feel when you smoke one. All this information was being recorded in my subconscious, and in the end, the message that stuck was how important cigarettes were in moments of happiness, stress, concentration, and relaxation. Also, in many old Western movies, the main character would always ask for a cigarette as his last wish. How many times do I remember hearing that from other kids at school? And yet, for all those kids, it had already sunk into their subconscious that a cigarette, or a cigar, was so enjoyable, so necessary, that even a dying man would need to smoke one right before he died. Unfortunately, such wrong information often gets recorded in our subconscious. It's like a little child who falls while trying to go down a step for the first time. If the child falls and gets hurt, afterwards they'll be afraid to go down alone and will ask for help. In the same way, smoking is a wrong entry in our subconscious. That's why, when you consciously decide to quit, your effort is sabotaged by your own subconscious, which falsely considers it to be something good. Let's go back to the original question. Why did you start smoking? The answer is that, subconsciously, you believe that smoking has something to offer you and you feel like you're missing out on something if you don't smoke. This belief has been rooted in your subconscious since you were a little child. Ignoring our parents' advice, we all smoked. We actually put in a lot of effort to get addicted to cigarettes. Usually, the first cigarette is disgusting. It chokes us and makes us cough. Nevertheless, when we see another smoker who might be well-dressed, young, handsome, or beautiful, we think there must be something worthwhile about smoking. And all of this makes us go through the trouble of trying to get addicted. And over time, we sink deeper and deeper into our addiction and start to feel pleasure when the discomfort of withdrawal stops. This reinforces our belief that smoking really is a pleasure. But you might wonder, what does discomfort have to do with smoking when it's supposed to bring pleasure? The tobacco industry itself, forced by a court order some years ago, published studies that had been hiding for many more years. These studies stated that nicotine causes stimulation in the nervous system and muscle tension for several hours. Therefore, nicotine causes a delayed disturbance in your nervous system, which you perceive as nervousness, muscle tension, or general discomfort. When I read this, I tried to experience it myself by having a cigarette after I had quit smoking. Basically, it was just an excuse to start smoking again. Nevertheless, I realized that this cigarette didn't give me any pleasure. It choked me and made me feel uncomfortable a little while later. But after a short while, exactly what I expected happened. I felt a delayed nervousness and a discomfort in my chest and in my head. This delayed nervousness that comes after every cigarette, which you get used to as long as you smoke or vape, is unpleasant but temporary, as it goes away after a few hours. Depending on the person or the smoker, it may take a few hours or even a few days for this symptom to go away completely. Every smoker experiences it differently, both in terms of intensity and in the way it manifests. Some people feel stressed, others become more irritable, and others feel tension in their bodies. But the most important thing is that it's not very noticeable. It's mild and you don't really perceive it in your daily life. So, the symptoms it causes you are easily confused with other conditions, like stress, anxiety, or pressure. Specifically, when you have your first cigarette, as your body tries to get rid of the nicotine poison, it starts to show the discomfort symptoms we described earlier. But your subconscious mistakenly records this experience as anxiety, because the symptoms are similar to those of anxiety, like discomfort, stress, and pressure. So you just managed to trick your otherwise infallible subconscious into thinking that nicotine withdrawal is anxiety. But then, after many cigarettes, our body starts to confuse real anxiety with nicotine withdrawal. So, when we are truly anxious or upset, we essentially feel the same symptoms as nicotine withdrawal, and so we smoke nonstop, because we feel that in order to ease what we're feeling, we have to keep smoking. In such cases, we might not even get the chance to feel the real symptoms of nicotine withdrawal, since we light one cigarette after another, and not enough time passes for those symptoms to become noticeable. Nevertheless, the anxiety is still there and doesn't go away no matter how many cigarettes you smoke. How many times have you found yourself lighting a cigarette while the previous one is still in the ashtray? The full cycle of the cigarette's success is completed by the misinterpretation of real pleasure as well. Our subconscious, mistaking the relief from nicotine withdrawal symptoms for real pleasure, gets confused once again. The truth is, of course, that perhaps the only way the cigarette offers anything to the smoker is this temporary relief from the withdrawal symptoms that the cigarette itself created earlier. Unfortunately, though, instead of focusing on the fact that the cigarette is causing your withdrawal symptoms, your subconscious is tricked into thinking that you enjoy the cigarette, since by smoking the next one, it just relieved the discomfort you felt from the previous one. That's why, when you're at a party or on vacation, you always feel the need to have a cigarette. Why? Because our subconscious has confused the pleasure you feel in that moment with the relief from withdrawal symptoms that the cigarette gives you. The smoker is doomed, whether in happiness or in sadness, to seek out a cigarette. And all this happens simply because the cigarette managed to trick their subconscious. To achieve this, the cigarette has 3 characteristics that no other drug has. First, it has a time delay in the symptoms you feel when it's time to smoke. So much so that the subconscious can't realize that the discomfort comes from the cigarette. Second, it creates the same discomfort as real anxiety. And third, it creates the same pleasure as genuine enjoyment. Once, I had quit smoking for 3 or 4 weeks and started again when I was happy on a beautiful beach I had found myself on. I remember afterwards I was puzzled and said to myself, but I wasn't feeling sad. I didn't feel any pressure or anxiety, so why did I start again? How can I explain the sudden, intense craving I felt while I was just relaxing on the beach? The explanation is simple. My craving was due to the mistaken association my subconscious had made between pleasure and smoking. How tragic that, even though I wasn't physically addicted, I relapsed simply because my subconscious had been fooled. What I experienced back then, I believe, is the number one reason people relapse into smoking after the first tough days have passed and the delayed nervousness from nicotine withdrawal has subsided. The reason in this case is purely psychological and is due to the fact that your subconscious had been tricked and had associated both the feeling of joy and the feeling of anxiety with smoking a cigarette. Unbelievable, but true. Attention! This can happen in the first few months, and in this case, your conscious mind must overcome your subconscious. Now that you know you don't actually feel any need to smoke a cigarette, you're simply either anxious or happy. So let's sum up everything we've discussed and put in order how nicotine affects you, so you'll never forget it. Remember that nicotine creates a vicious cycle that keeps you trapped. When you smoke your first cigarette, you don't feel good at all. On the contrary, you don't like it. Whether it's an e-cigarette with any flavor, a classic cigarette, or a heated tobacco product. After a little while, you start to feel nervous and experience other symptoms due to nicotine withdrawal. If at that moment you smoke the next cigarette, right when you feel the withdrawal, then suddenly the withdrawal symptoms decrease and you feel relieved. A little while later, the withdrawal symptoms appear again, so you need another cigarette to feel relieved. And so it goes on. But no matter how many times you relieve the nervousness, it will always be there for the smoker. At the same time, the non-smoker will be calm and peaceful and will never have to face this inner conflict. So, while with our first cigarettes the delayed nervousness from nicotine makes us think we're anxious, and relieving it with the next cigarette makes us feel pleasure and relaxation, later on, after quite a few cigarettes, things change. When you feel real anxiety or sadness, you feel like you want to smoke, and when you experience genuine happiness about something, suddenly you feel again that you want to smoke. Because the relief from nicotine withdrawal symptoms feels a lot like real joy. By now, you've truly fallen into the cigarette trap. Remember how many times, when you're stressed because of work or personal problems, you feel the need to have a cigarette. This is nothing more than your subconscious confusing the symptoms of nicotine withdrawal with anxiety. However, when you're having a good time at a party during the holidays, the urge for a cigarette becomes strong because your subconscious has linked the relief from nicotine withdrawal symptoms with pleasure. This mechanism is the reason why smoking seems to go so well with both stressful moments and moments of joy. This delayed discomfort and its relief have created illusions of feelings for you, trapping you in a vicious cycle of addiction. Understanding this mechanism is the first step to breaking this cycle. Now you know that nicotine doesn't actually provide real pleasure or relaxation. It's just a drug that creates withdrawal symptoms and then temporarily relieves them, making you think it gave you something. The truth is that you can live a better and healthier life without cigarettes, by freeing your subconscious from the false beliefs that nicotine itself has created. Now that you understand the nicotine cycle and the illusion of pleasure, you can start working towards freeing yourself from smoking. Every time you feel the urge to smoke, remember that it is not a real need. It's just your subconscious that has been tricked. With this awareness, you can take the first step towards a life without cigarettes. Break the vicious cycle and free your subconscious from the false beliefs of nicotine. Live a life full of true joy and health.